Welcome to Baseball Biz. I'm Mark Corbett, your host, and with me is none other than Mr. Brandon No Way. How you doing today, Brandon?
I'm doing pretty good, Mark. How about you?
I am doing fan-freaking-tastic, my friend. You know, the sun's out. It's a wonderful day here, and great times, great things happening. We got some great stuff to talk about on today's show, too. We're going to have a very special interview with Mr. Marek Warszawski, who is a columnist with the Fresno Bee. He has been covering the Fresno Grizzlies minor league team, and we'll talk about them and some of the changes they're experiencing with minor league baseball. We'll also take a look at what's happening with free agents in minor league baseball. Rule 5, what players are being impacted by that. As Super Twos, we talked about a couple of weeks ago, Cleveland Indians, minor leagues overall, and we'll also talk a little bit about COVID, vaccines, and the 2020 season for Major League Baseball. All right, Brandon, it's starting out here, buddy. Things are still happening. You know, we talk about free agency, we talk about the hot stove, but as you and I discussed before, it wasn't until in February 2019 before Machado and Bryce Harper had signed on, and last year was just weird too. So I don't know that there's a whole lot happening with free agency. What are you seeing on bubbling up?
Well, I mean, it was a little bit of a slower week. Not a lot of big names out there have signed yet, as we expected. And this comes courtesy of The Athletic. We'll start with Dave Dombrowski. He's been named the new president of baseball ops for the Phillies. And the Texas Rangers, they traded outfielder Heriberto Hernandez, infielder Oslevis Nasabi, and outfielder Alexander Ovales to the Rays for first baseman Nate Lowe, first baseman Jake Gunther, and a player to be named later. The Dodgers, they added veterans, right-handed pitchers Brandon Morrow, Jimmy Nelson, and Brock Stewart, along with left-handed pitcher James Pazos. With the Mets, they named Jared Porter their new GM, and they also agreed to a 4-year, $40 million deal with James McCann. So that probably takes JT Realmuto out of the Mets sweepstakes.
Wow. With
the Red Sox, they signed Hunter Renfroe to a 1-year, $3.1 million deal with $600,000 in incentives. And he didn't have the greatest year last year with the Rays, but with that short left field and him being a righty, he could have a pretty big year up in Boston.
He's a real talent. They're fortunate to get him. I have no doubt that he'll shine here in the future.
Yeah. And the Royals, they re-signed Greg Holland to a 1-year, $2.75 million deal with performance bonuses that can raise up to 4.5. He's a 3-time All-Star with a 1.91 ERA and 6 saves and 28 1/3 innings for Kansas City last year. He spent his first 7 years with Kansas City and then signed with Colorado in 2017. And he's had 4 seasons with 40-plus saves, but none since 2017. And lastly, we'll close out with the Yankees, who they didn't sign anybody, but news came out that them and DJ LeMahieu are $25 million apart on a deal. So that's definitely a story worth watching.
Yeah, I saw that too. And I was wondering if it's because of the number of years. I read one thing where the Yankees wanted to come up a year short, and it sounded like it'd be a similar amount each year, but that DJ LeMahieu wanted one more year on their contract with them.
That's interesting, and it's funny seeing the Yankees, be a little hesitant with money. That's something we're not really used to seeing.
Yeah, and especially with DJ LeMahieu. I mean, he is a brand character. He is a guy at the bat who makes what happens for that team. I mean, granted, the Yankees didn't have the best team in the world last year, but if they didn't have DJ LeMahieu in there at all, well, it would have been a whole different thing. They would never have seen anything.
Yeah, he's been one of the top MVP candidates the past couple of years, and I think it'd be foolish to let him go, especially when a team across the city and the Mets are maybe considering going after him.
I am really looking forward to that. And, as much as I love the Yankees, I would love to see DJ LeMahieu with the Mets. I'm really interested in seeing what Steve Cohen's building, what that's going to be like in the next few years.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what Yankees fans have to say about that statement.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're probably about as happy as Boston was about Mookie Betts. So if that happens, if he indeed actually does not continue with them. All righty then. So that's what's bubbling on the hot stove, and more to come. We'll cover that each week. So, Brandon, thanks for the updates on that. Some of the other things we talked about recently in past shows were, one of them was the Rule 5. And the Rule 5, as you may remember, is when one major league team can pick a player from another major league team's minor leagues. If you had somebody who's been on your minor league team for like over 4 years or thereabouts, then another team can pick them. So basically, you're not using them. So, hey, I like that guy. So each team gets a chance that they can get a crack at. They can either participate with this or not. Pirates, I think, were pretty thirsty, especially since they got first choice. And taking a look, see at who some of the folks that made it through there, we're seeing the Pirates selected Jose Soriano, who's a right-hand pitcher, and they picked him up from the Angels. The Rangers, they picked up Brett Degas. He's a right-hand pitcher previously with the Dodgers. The Tigers picked up Akil Baddoo. He's an outfielder, and he was with the Twins. Red Sox, they picked up Garrett Whitlock, who's a right-hand pitcher for the Yankees. Orioles, Max Scarlo. Hope I got that right. He's a right-hand pitcher. He had been a right-hand pitcher for the Reds. The Diamondbacks, Zach Pop, right-hand pitcher, picked up from the Orioles. Rockies, Jordan Sheffield, right-hand pitcher for the Dodgers. Angels, Jose Riviera. Let's see, he had right-hand pitcher for the Astros. I'll just hit the other names. Mets picked up Luis Oviedo. Mariners, Will Vest. Phillies, Kyle Holder. Giants, Dedniel Nunez. Let's see, Miami Marlins picked up Paul Campbell, who was a right-hand pitcher for the Rays. And let's see, Cubs picked up Gray Finter, and the Indians, Trevor Stephan from the Yankees again. The A's picked up Kai Tom from the Indians. And the Orioles picked up Tyler Wells from the Twins, right-hand pitcher. The A's picked up Danny Jimenez, also a right-hand pitcher from the Jays. Sorry, guys. It's quite a little bit of recitation there. But what we're looking at is from this year's Rule 5 draft, 18 players were picked. What is extremely interesting is looking at the number of these folks that were actually right-handed pitchers. A very large bulk of those folks were right-hand pitchers. Now, I don't know, Brandon, do you think that a lot of people out there are seeing this and saying, that's somebody I need? Is it the individual and or as much the position? I don't know.
I don't know either. I mean, I never really paid much attention to the Rule 5 draft. Maybe this is just something that happens, but I mean, this draft was completely dominated by right-handed pitchers. And, with matchups, maybe they were thinking about that, but I don't know. But it's definitely interesting to see.
Expectations from Rule 5 draftees isn't always the highest. I mean, there's outstanding people like Roberto Clemente and others. I mean, I don't think it's been that long since there's been a great choice, but he's one of the most historically outstanding Rule 5 picks. And there is a lot of negotiation going on. I mean, when these people first come onto a team, I don't think they plan on being at the minors for 4 years. So that says something about their own stick-to-itiveness and the ability for a team to see some value in them to keep them there that long. So I think that's going to be interesting to see how some of these guys evolve. And another thing worth mentioning is it looked like the picks, the majority of picks, well, I'm saying the majority, those who had the most picks from their teams, the Dodgers, the Yankees, and I think even the Rays had some of the more teams that were pilfered, if you will, from their minor leagues.
That, even though you lost a bunch of guys, that's technically a compliment to your staff and your farm system, because you have a lot of guys that people are interested in and want to take for themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Because like you said, I think it's a salute to them, a salute to their farm system, and saying obviously you have a very rich farm system because there's people there worth picking. You've done some things. It looks like they may be doing well with you, but we think we can bring them on our team and do better. So congratulations to all those Rule 5 draftees, and I wish them the best this year because they basically have a guarantee they're not going to be cut from the regular season. They will play out the entire season, and that is a lot. we won't get into the deviations that go beyond that. We talked about that in the past episode. With players, their careers are, based on a lot of different things. One of them you and I talked about before. Once you come into the major league, and by that I mean actually first year with a minor league team, once you come into a major league, you have 6 years before you get to free agency. But you have 3 years. Once you complete your first 3 years, you can do some minimal arbitration with the team that you signed with. So then there's the Super Twos. Yeah, what the Super Twos is that any player who comes into Major League Baseball has basically a 6-year span before they can become a free agent. Now, in the first 3 years, your contract is your contract. In the second 3 years, you're able to negotiate maybe a little bit more above the major league base, which is like 500,000+. And what happens is some players who've been there for virtually 3 years, but not a full 3 years, those folks at the very top of that can be what they call the Super Twos. Those players then are given eligibility as if they had completed 3 years, and they can negotiate something with their teams. So there's a new crop each year, and usually we have an information about when that cutoff date is. I haven't seen that this year. Have you seen that?
I haven't at all, man. You'd think they'd have it out by now, but they haven't released anything.
No, but you saw an article, who was it, with Ken Rosenthal, about who was actually reaching the Super 2 status this year?
Oh, yeah, Ken Rosenthal. Last night, roughly, he tweeted out, all the guys that were qualified for Super 2s, and some pretty big names with the Yankees. You had Clint Frazier, Gleyber Torres, Luke Voigt, Max Fried with the Braves, Walker Buehler with the Dodgers, Juan Soto, along with Yonny Chirinos and Ryan Yarbrough with the Rays, Carson Kelly with the Diamondbacks, and J.D. Davis with the Mets, just to name a few.
Yeah, I'm always glad to see these guys get a chance to actually receive receive basically the funds for what their service is above and beyond that 500,000. And when you see somebody like Buehler, or you see somebody like Juan Soto, or even Ryan Yarbrough, I'm glad to see that they're able to negotiate at this point. So kudos to the class of 2020 and Super Twos. And thank you, Ken Rosenthal, for sharing this information. I would love to see what those, I don't know, MLB seems to be slow when it comes to sharing information about finances and how they make certain decisions. I'd like to see them come out with that. I'd like to actually be able, as somebody who reports on baseball, to have the facts about why and when they're making these decisions.
Yeah.
Talk about making decisions. Cleveland has had to make some decisions. It's not surprising. There's been some remarks about who the mascots, who the brand is for a lot of these teams, whether it be cultural appropriation or just seemed disrespectful. Teams like in football, the Washington Redskins, there certainly became some social awareness, if you would. So, maybe we should just continue that. Maybe that's not actually being respectful, and there's enough Native Americans and First Nation people in Canada who say, quit that. Don't do that. That's wrong. It's disrespectful. And, you're going to meet some resistance with fans and traditionalists. But then if you're actually thinking about the people overall, you've got to make some hard decisions. And they did. They didn't come up immediately with another name or another brand. They became the Washington football team. Oh, gosh. I don't know. I kept waiting to see, if you're a collector, I guess you're going to have a big time keeping everything that the Redskins had before, and then this non-year with a mascot and whatever they get next year.
There's even a possibility people have talked about them keeping the name Washington football team.
Well, that would be interesting. I mean, it's what they are, right? You and I have had this discussion before. Why should you be identified with an animal or some other kind of mascot? Your actual presence is with that community, so why not just be with that community?
Yeah, it's something different and unique.
Absolutely. Well, the Indians, though, they've gone on and decided to make some changes. It was interesting kind of looking back at some things and seeing that they had actually been the Cleveland Naps. Ain't like that, Naps.
Like take a nap?
That's what you would think. There was actually a coach who was, I can't think of his full name, it's like Napoli, somebody else, Nap, and Napay, I believe it was. And once he retired and left the team, and back around 2014, said, we need another name. Nap isn't here anymore, so what are we going to name the team? And lo and behold, Indians was selected. Some would say, well, it was first established saying the strength of those people, they maybe they were saying they deserve respect, but that ideal obviously fell short, especially when you look in today's world. And what they evolved a mascot called Chief Wahoo, which I didn't think was complimentary at all.
Yeah, I could see why people, especially Native Americans, would be offended by Chief Wahoo because it makes that culture look like a bunch of a grinning idiot.
Exactly.
That's what I feel like.
Exactly. And while they're still the Indians, they did, I believe, drop Chief Wahoo about a year ago. So that they had taken that step. I'm curious to see, if they have, I don't think they'll have a new name by 2021 for the next upcoming season. I think they will in 2022. They may be, what do you think? Maybe this just be the Cleveland baseball team this year?
Now, this year, I hear they're keeping Indians until 2022 when they hope to have a new name, which a lot of people say Cleveland Spiders is the favorite to be the name, which sounds like it could be pretty cool, but it's not every day you get a team that's changing its identity, especially as much as we've had the past couple years.
I'll be interested from a business perspective too, looking at what the cost of that is. And I'm sure people are stocking up on gear that has the Cleveland Indians. And you probably be looking at eBay in a year and be able to they'll probably be charging quite a price for some of that.
A lot of collector's items.
Indeed. But, and then I have to wonder too, Brandon, you take a look at the Atlanta Braves. And is that another name that's going to be looked at? I mean, you can say one again. You can say, well, we respect those people, and this is a way of saying Braves is a strong word, but some would still say, I guess, cultural appropriation. And but then there's part of that too. I mean, I would watch the Braves. I like them. Long ago, I remember seeing the media mogul owner Ted Turner in the stands, and there he was with his wife, actress Jane Fonda. And they were cheering on the team, but Brandon, what they were doing was the old tomahawk chop. So pop, 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 pop. And even if you take the name of the Braves and you say, well, that's okay, I don't think you can take the tomahawk chop and say that's okay. I think they've asked people not to do it anymore, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird time we're going through, especially with mascots. I mean, you have teams like the Indians changing their names, and nobody knows what, like Florida State with the Seminoles or the Chicago Blackhawks or Kansas City Chiefs, what they'll do, even though theirs is a different case, because I know Florida State for a fact works with the Seminole tribe.
Right.
Like their newest uniforms for football, I know they work together to do the shoulder designs. It means something in the Seminole language. I don't know exactly, but they work with them, and I believe the Chiefs and Blackhawks do as well. So,
well, that's
it's definitely interesting to see where that goes.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a wise choice on their part. I mean, and if both can find some value in that, then it's great. So, anyway, well, we'll look at more at that. Like I said, in a future episode, I want to take a look at what the cost is to do that. We know that there's a cost as far as public relations, and you could say maybe even ethical and moral costs by continuing on with a name that's affecting a lot of people who don't like it. So we'll take a look at that in a future episode. But as far as things that people don't like, one of the things I think anybody who's a fan of minor league baseball this year has been very disheartening. And we're going to hear from Marek Warszawski here in a moment. We talked about earlier the Fresno Bee columnist. He's been there for years and covering the Fresno Grizzlies, a minor league team there. But before we get started and talking with him in the interview, I want to just remind folks what's happened in the last year. Basically, Major League Baseball and minor league baseball have been working together for years with something that's called the PBA. PBA for Professional baseball agreement. And that expired September 30th. But long before that happened, negotiations were going on. Information was leaking out about what was being said. Rob Manfred was getting upset that information was leaking out about what was being said. A couple of things he was concerned about and wanted to negotiate is, one, he wanted to make sure there was no reason to have a team if it didn't take care of its players, and by that he meant facilities, he meant player development, and he also meant what they were getting paid. And one of the things also was travel. So those are just a few of the ones he covered. And from that, he said, well, let's see, we have 160 minor league teams. We need to cut 40 of them. Let's cut 40 teams. And I thought, well, damn, first off. And it came down so harshly, and it showed I didn't see a lot going on as far as negotiating with the minor leagues, Brandon, but I'm reading things now that he's still supposedly working with MILB, trying to hammer out some kind of contract. So this is impacting a lot of local communities. It's not just something where willy-nilly you're saying, okay, we're cutting these teams. Suddenly there's going to be only 120 teams. What happened to those other 40 teams? What's happening in those communities? And now, Brandon, you were looking at it. I was reading something from Sara Sanchez, and she gave a different kind of insight. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, Sara Sanchez from BleakCubbyBlue.com wrote a really good article about, sort of like the dark side of what's going on with this deal. And it's something that really isn't getting attention, but I think it really should be. I mean, I sent it to you last night, and you sounded shocked when we talked this morning about it.
Yeah, it really kind of hit me right between the eyes, because I don't think people think enough about this. You and I talk about there's enough going on in the world with all the politics, with COVID-19, the vaccine, all that, very important things. But what falls to the side, I mean, if I look for international news on news, I'm never going to see that these days, because evidently there's nothing happening but COVID. And minor league baseball is a footnote at best. I'm not seeing it covered, though, on sports news and this whole thing. So it's one of the things that Sara talks about, and what does she said here? Hang on.
That our inability to care is a crucial part of MLB's plan.
Yeah, I think that's critical, because that's what it goes to. That's the heart of it. If we as fans don't care, why should anybody else? So she was putting together some great stories on this, and it basically talks about how they're just – it basically talks about how Major League Baseball's turned away from the minors, and as far as giving any kind of real negotiations. And that as long as we as fans don't care about it, as long as we as media people don't talk about it, nothing's going to happen. So the passion she had, I know, for her team with the Cubbies is strong. It's huge. But if nothing's being done, that's it. But to show you what I think is part of the disrespect that MLB has for the local minor league teams is that when they negotiated, saying which teams would be able to stay, they had some prerequisites, if you will. And why don't you touch on that for a sec?
Yeah, she wrote in this article, commenting on an article by Evan Drellich, and that 120 teams are being asked to sign if they like to maintain their MLB affiliation. And you think, you're signing a deal, maybe it's like you got to commit to this much money or this amount of time. That's what you think it would be, right?
Yeah.
But MLB sent a 56-page document to the teams that it wants to partner with, outlining its terms, what is to be in the actual 10-year contract called a Professional Development License, or PDL, and the teams have until December 18th to decide whether they would like to go the next step, which is a review of the actual PDL. And to move forward, MLB requires that the minor league owners sign two things before they do that: a non-disclosure agreement and an indemnification of MLB. What that basically says is that minor league owners at this point are not formally agreeing to be partners. That comes when they actually review the PDL. So the decision of those teams now is, if they're considering a lawsuit against MLB, they'd be signing those rights away in order to review the full PDL.
It's interesting that they actually did come up with a 10-year agreement, And I'm curious if MLB is allowing anybody to do a 10-year agreement. That was kind of interesting in of itself. I mean, for operations, and if you're going to make a commitment to having a team at a minor league level, I'd want to have that much. I actually would want a contract for 10 years.
Yeah, and going on, MLB teams will lose their ability to disclose information about the partnership or any challenging elements of it legally as a prerequisite to seeing the agreement. So it's basically, if you want to see this agreement, you got to sign this. You can't talk about it. You can't sue us or anything. You can't do anything about it. And failure to agree to either the NDA or indemnification of MLB would lead MLB to move on to offer that partnership to another team that just lost its affiliation. So it's basically, if you don't like this, oh well, too bad, we'll go on to the next team who will agree with it.
Well, that tells us a lot. And, I'm looking forward to see more about this, but I really would like to see mainstream sports media, those who have some impact, cover these things. It's just not happening. If Tony La Russa does something stupid, God knows they'll talk about that for 5 minutes. And not to say that it isn't newsworthy, but this is very sports newsworthy. If you're actually a sports journalist and not just a parrot for MLB, please consider digging deeper on this. I know I come on with a very strong opinion about some of this, but there's people in these communities who have to live there and make reasonable agreements with MLB. And one of those, again, of course, we talked earlier, the Fresno Grizzlies. They are able to stay in as a minor league, but one of the things that changed is they are no longer a AAA affiliate. They are now a single-A affiliate. And the interview we got here in a moment with Marek Warszawski is going to go into some of that. He's going to share his thoughts. He's going to share what he's seen, the development of the team, the Chuck Chansey Park where they play, and I'm looking forward to that. So we're going to go ahead and listen to Marek right now. So thank you, guys, and we'll come right back after the interview. Well, folks, we're very fortunate here today to have Marek Warszawski with us, talking with us about the Fresno Grizzlies. As many of you may know, Major League Baseball has decided to contract from 160 teams that were with the minor leagues down to 120. And that impacted a lot of teams, not just merely whether or not they were going to be able to continue to participate with an affiliation with Major League Baseball, but also at what level and at what team they'd still be affiliated with. So, Mark, again, I want to thank you for coming here today and kind of share with us, because you are a columnist and have been for a while here with the Fresno Bee, and done an outstanding job with that. So you covered both business, sports, and a lot of other things. But you have been really taking a tight look at the changes that have happened with the Grizzlies and the back and forth with Major League Baseball in the city. And I was wondering if you kind of give us a hint of what's happened over the last few weeks. Where were you guys with the Grizzlies, and where are you now?
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here and to talk baseball with you. Yes, I'm Marek Warszawski. I'm a columnist at the Fresno Bee. I've been here for about 21 years now. I started out as a sports writer. In fact, I was the Fresno Grizzlies beat writer way back in 2000 and 2001, a long time ago before. So I've been around with the team for a long time, and our roles have changed over the years, but I love baseball, so I always pay attention to what's going on with the Grizzlies. The Fresno Grizzlies came into existence in 1998 as a AAA franchise in the Pacific Coast League, which is one of the two AAA leagues that there was three at that time. Now there's only two. They came into existence as the Giants AAA. They were their farm club, the top farm club, from 1998 to 2014. And the Giants left Fresno for Sacramento. The Grizzlies picked up the Astros for 4 years. And the last 2 years, they were actually with they started becoming a little more nomadic. They started picking up, the Washington Nationals, which was a tough deal, because of the distance. But, last year there was no minor league baseball, so that really was a 1 year deal. So now what's happened within Major League Baseball's grand reshuffling, they've elevated two, an independent team, the St. Paul Saints, to AAA, and then two AA teams to AAA. So they needed to reduce 3 teams, and 2 AAA teams in Texas. Well, I think it's Wichita and San Antonio, I think, went down to AA. But the Fresno Grizzlies, since there's no other, professional baseball in California, the only other option is the California League. And, of course, the California League is shifting from high A ball to low A ball.
Yeah.
So the Fresno Grizzlies are going from a AAA team to all the way to low A ball in one move. And that's basically that story is what's been playing out here in Fresno for the last couple weeks. Is it 120 teams, right, are now in affiliated baseball, 120 minor league clubs. And the Fresno Grizzlies were the last team to get an invitation. They were the last domino to fall in this big process because, again, we can talk a little bit more about it, but it's a big drop going from AAA to low A, and there's a lot of ramifications for the city and, otherwise. So, yeah, that's what's happened here.
Wow. That's fantastic. Well, it's not fantastic. It's scary is what the hell it is, actually. I mean, I'm sitting here, and if I had a team that I loved, I would still enjoy watching them, but to me, it'd almost be an insult, okay? I'd feel a sense of disrespect from the major leagues. And I was watching the numbers as all this was progressing. I said, we're up to 119 teams. What's going to be that 120th? I see they're still negotiating. Okay, what's going on in Fresno? So there is a lot of back and forth there. And I was wondering if you guys were still going to be on the roster. I mean, it seemed like it was either you're going to take this or you're not going to be with us, meaning from MLB to the city.
Yeah, that was the ultimatum that the city sent in a letter, from their, deputy commissioner in charge of all their legal affairs, basically said, you take this low A deal or you're not going to be in affiliated ball at all. And that's it. And, the city of Fresno, we have, in 2002, they built a $46 million AAA stadium that, with 12,500 seats. And again, fewer now because of some, renovations, 32 luxury boxes. It has a beautiful club level. It has indoor batting cages, clubhouses, all the room for, everything, AAA team needs, coaches' offices. They need, in addition to clubhouses, they need training rooms of a certain size. There's all, family areas.
Oh, wow.
Kinds of demands, AAA stadium has, so they built a facility that meets all those demands. And yet now it's, we're still paying that, $3.1 million a year in, construction bonds to pay off this facility. So, it changes the business model when you go from AAA to low A like that. And I'll just tell you a little bit more about where I am. Fresno, we're in Central California, in the middle of the Central Valley. It's a city. Fresno is a city of 540,000 people. We have Clovis next door, which is 120,000. Oof. So you've 650,000 people basically living in the same blob, and Fresno County itself has 1 million people. So there's a lot of people here. We're not, not obviously not as big as the Bay Area or LA. So people don't know about us, but Fresno is the 5th largest city in California. It would take us about 3 hours to get to San Francisco, to get to AT&T Park, maybe 3.5 hours to get to Dodger Stadium. So, people in Fresno are, you're either a Dodger fan, a Giants fan, and third place is the A's, and maybe there's Angels and Padres fans here to some extent, and Yankees fans or wherever, Cubs fans and all that. But, generally the people's allegiances here are to the Bay Area teams or to the LA teams. And it's pretty split. But, so we're not large enough to have our own major league franchise here. That's never going to happen. So we have a long history of AAA baseballs. But it was a Fresno Cardinals affiliate in the 40s and 50s. Then the Fresno Giants, the Class A California team from the late 50s to all the way to the late 1980s, until the facility they were playing in was condemned for being structurally unsound. Then we went for about 10 years without having any affiliated baseball at all. And that was a big absence. There's been a lot of baseball. There's been good baseball. Tom Seaver is a Fresno native. That's the most famous name, but I could name several other major leaguers from Fresno whose names you'd be familiar with too. So this area has a great baseball tradition. So there was absence. The absence of baseball was felt when we didn't have it. And there's a lot of excitement to get that downtown stadium built. It was kind of seen as a, part of a revitalizing our downtown here in Fresno, which, like a lot of cities is, kind of lost some of its luster over the years due to sprawl and other things. That's a common trait. But anyway, so we invested a lot in baseball. We invested in a stadium, and for 20 years or so, the Grizzlies did pretty well. It was about middle of the pack in attendance, I would say, as far as AAA teams go. Never really at the top, but never close to the bottom. But yeah, and so now here we go. Now things have changed, so it'll be interesting.
Well, I mean, a couple of things. One, you guys had a good year in 2015 and 2018, if I remember correctly. Y'all were doing really well with the Pacific Coast League then. And so, I mean, I wouldn't take anything at all away from the Grizzlies. You guys did a fantastic job. And just a point of interest for me, you were talking about being with the Giants was for about 16 years or thereabouts.
Right.
And the proximity, like you said, just 3 hours down the road. So that has actually been kind of you hear that as one of the deciding factors of how MLB is moving along. The Marlins down here in Miami, now they're up there with Jacksonville, which is a trek still. It's not all the way across to Washington from California, but I mean, Washington D.C. that is from California. What you guys had with the Nationals,
right.
I mean, I know that's a factor, but the other factor, I mean, is one of the things that Manfred was talking about early on were facilities. Now I'm talking now single A and such below, but you guys have had. I mean, what is it? Was it? Like I said, over 12,500 seats.
It's about 10,800 now. They took out some because they added like a kids play area and like an outdoor bar, where you can have drinks and, down left field line, so it's they took out. So those are places where anybody can go. So it's just more of a family friendly, better atmosphere because, in 2020, nobody sits in their seats and watches 9 innings. They want to go to like a social area. Right. And so, the owner, the Grizzlies have good, strong ownership. For a while that was kind of a question mark. The team was on the market for a couple of years, and it was not necessarily looking good. But ownership group came in a couple of years ago. They're headed by the Ray and Michael Baker are the owners. They're actually based out of Denver. I think they have a little piece of the Rockies and maybe one of those rookie league teams that is no longer in affiliated baseball. And they've ownership came in and made about $4 million in improvements and upgrades to the stadium. I mean, they signed a long-term deal with the city here, so things were actually looking pretty stable from that point of view. And actually, it's taken a long time, but the city has done a few things to help, finally kind of try to revitalize downtown. And so the area around the stadium, like of the last 5 or 6 years, has really picked up. I mean, there's more to do and there's more reasons to go down there than. For a while, it was really kind of like the beacon on the hill. There was hardly anything to do downtown except for to go to a baseball game. But that certainly changed. So, it's been rough. What we always hear is, there's 5 Major League Baseball teams in California, right? 4. I just said 4 Major League Baseball teams.
It could be changing as we speak.
No, I was right originally. Go with my brain, right? There's 5 Major League Baseball teams in California. So it would make the most sense if one of those wanted to have their AAA team in Fresno, right?
Yeah.
That's not really how it's gone. The Angels have a long-term agreement with Salt Lake City. They've been there for a long time. Apparently it works for them. The Padres are in El Paso. They've been in El Paso since its existence. Apparently that relationship's fine. The Dodgers, their owners own the Oklahoma City Dodgers. So that's where their AAA team is going to be.
Right.
And the Oakland A's, which maybe eventually if there's some MLB expansion, if it's in Vegas, they might end up here. But, the A's, which I think would make a lot of sense for them to have their AAA team here. They haven't been interested so far. And right now they're in a great situation in Las Vegas with a beautiful new stadium, there that replaced the one that was terrible. I mean, Las Vegas used to be the worst place to be in AAA, because of the facility. And now it's one of the best because of the facility. So the A's are happy to be there. So anyway, it's been one of those situations where the Grizzlies, the Fresno Grizzlies, have not been able to, get a relationship with a West Coast, major league team. The Arizona Diamondbacks are in Reno, for example. Obviously, Seattle Mariners are in Tacoma. That works for them. That's very close. And then, the Rockies and Albuquerque are pretty close to each other. So Fresno after the Giants left, going with the Astros was really great because we got to see some great prospects. Carlos Correa came in. You mentioned in 2015, the Grizzlies won the AAA national championship that year, right? So that was the most successful on-the-field season the team has ever had. That relationship with the Astros was great, but they weren't going to be here long-term necessarily. And once they left in that game of musical chairs, Fresno was kind of getting stuck. The one thing we do hear about here in Fresno is our airport. It's not as good as some other airports. We don't have as many direct flights as other places. It's harder to get here. And, obviously for the Washington Nationals, it's harder to get here. It's harder to get here than some other places. But honestly, if you look at you compare it to Reno's airport or Albuquerque's airport, El Paso's airport, we're very comparable to that. So it's just one of those things that we just got unlucky. Weren't able to, didn't have once the Giants left, they didn't hook up with somebody that was going to be here for the long term.
Well, see, that's the thing, too. When you're talking about the airport, I wouldn't say it's a non-issue, but I sometimes think it's just one more thing they like to plink on top to say, oh, here's a reason we're not going to do it.
Right.
Pardon me, I would like – I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're right. I think that it does add to it. But I wouldn't say the airport here is necessarily worse than some other AAA cities, right? It's just – you can compare El Paso, Reno, Albuquerque. They don't have more flights to more places than Fresno does. So, and it's definitely not more out of the way. But again, it's just people are, they've had those cities have good ties with, with their MLB affiliates. But, who knows? There could be some shaking up if MLB ever decides to expand. That was one of the things that, MLB didn't promise anything to the city of Fresno. But they did say in writing that, if there was ever any expansion, they would encourage, that a team to place its AAA team here. I think that made people feel good because I guess some people think that Las Vegas might be, one of the leading – Las Vegas and Nashville, I guess, are the two cities that get thrown around the most. And then we hear Portland and the Carolinas. If there was West Coast expansion out here, perhaps Fresno could find itself back into AAA.
Yeah, I see that as a real possibility. I mean, were you talking to about seeing certain players coming up through the system, or maybe they had injuries and they're coming back in a rehab and you get to see them there at the AAA at Fresno? Oh, yeah. I mean, I love living here in Florida because there's all kinds of training areas around here where teams go down. Sometimes a single A team, like the Rays down to Port Charlotte with Stone Crabs. Of course, that's no longer an affiliation. But you would be able to see a major league player in a minor league stadium. And that happened a lot. But the also thing is you went there for the game. And as you were pointing out, too, a lot of the fans that come there, it's not necessarily I'm going to be there for 9 innings. They may come in there. They may come in after a couple of innings have already started, because they were getting the kids ready and everything else. And it wasn't a set deadline that you were going to be there 2 hours early, see batting practice and everything else in the game. So I guess my question is this. Those who love baseball and are really into it, they want to see those young players coming up, and even those who are like in rehab, they want to see them there on that local AAA team or maybe even a lower team, depending on proximity. But as far as the majority of fans, say for the Fresno Grizzlies, how important is that compared to just being able to have the baseball experience, to be a family day out?
Well, we were going to find out, right? I mean, I think that most fans fall into the latter category, right?
Right.
It's just a baseball experience. The stadium is really nice. It's double deck. It looks like a miniature Major League Park, and just to go out there for that baseball experience and have fun and family-friendly atmosphere, I think that's most folks. And if you look at the Grizzlies' attendance, I mean, last year was 5,600, I believe, and that was about middle of the pack for the PCL.
Yeah.
That would double the highest amount in the Cal League that they're joining, right? So again, I wouldn't expect that number to fall off dramatically. There might be some people, As far as rehabs go, I mean, I don't know how the Colorado Rockies will handle that. I would say that was, those drew some of the biggest crowds when you'd have a big name that come down to AAA, like a Randy Johnson or.
Oh yeah.
That was a monster name, biggest one one of the bigger ones I can think of. Even Nomar Garcia-Parra on a visiting team. I remember Andres Galarraga hitting like the longest home run I've ever seen at that stadium when he was on a rehab. But, the people that you remember, though, are the people that are coming up. For the Giants for a while, it was Barry Bonds' era, so player development wasn't too important to them. They were just signing free agents and trading prospects. But then we got the Buster Posies and the Madison Bumgarners, Matt Cains, and of course Tim Lincecum is probably the single most memorable player that we've had in Fresno, just from a pure talent standpoint. I mean, it was ridiculous. That memory stands out the most as far as watching him pitch here. I mean, I think he made 5 AAA starts, and he was 4-0 with a .29 ERA.
Wow.
That up for you. He gave up 1 run in 31 innings.
Oh gosh.
And he was removed from 2 no-hitters after the 7th inning. That was the most untouchable, craziest pitcher. I mean, most talent I'd ever seen on a pitching mound in the stadium. And of course, he wasn't here long, and he had won 2 Cy Youngs until his kind of body gave out on him. But very memorable. And then the Astros, we had some talent here too. I mentioned Carlos Correa, but he was pretty memorable too. But I'd like to think that people would come out for those. But what's funny is that it wasn't really true. When Madison, there was some buzz for Tim Lincecum and Madison Bumgarner, Matt Cain, Buster Posey. But the bigger buzz came is after they became Giants and won the World Series. Then everybody was, oh, they came through Fresno. How great was that, right? And so their bobblehead doll promotions or seeing the World Series trophy coming to town was actually a bigger deal than when they were actually pitching or playing catcher for the Grizzlies. That attracted the hardcore baseball prospect guy. But as far as, the average people and hype and people getting excited, that happens, after they win the World Series. And you say, hey, he was in Fresno. That's really how it goes, unfortunately. You can't make it here until you make it somewhere else bigger. That's
it's kind of a shame, but it is how we kind of work as fans, some of us anyway. And I get that. I'd like to kind of jump for a moment here too, looking at is Chuck Chansey Park where the Fresno Grizzlies play, and you were talking about the initial investment of that and still paying off the cost of it. I was in your article. I was reading one of the things was it's through different ownerships. The rent of the stadium has kind of gone down significantly as far as money being paid by the owners.
Yes, the original lease agreement between the first Grizzlies owners, and this group had been fighting to get a AAA team and stadium built here for nearly a decade before it happened. I mean, the team took almost a decade, and the stadium took even longer. But yeah, originally they were paying $1.5 million a year, which was like more than double what any other minor league baseball team in the country was paying, right? So it was bad terms to begin with, terms that weren't going to be able to be met. But again, I wasn't involved in those negotiations or that process. But yeah, so the league is the lease, the rent has gone down from $1.5 million to $1 million. And then it was renegotiated to $500,000. I guess I want to say this is in 2008 or 9. And then the new owners had another lease, which I think 4 years ago, where the rent stayed the same, but how they arrived at that number was a little different, the calculations. And now the new lease now with the expected revenues of a low A team, is now $100,000.
Wow.
And the city is paying $3.1 million a year stadium bonds. So yeah, financially it's still about $3 million in the hole if you just from that alone. There's some other revenue sharing and some other ways to make that number shrink a little bit, but it doesn't shrink much. City of Fresno is still subsidizing baseball to the tune of about 2.5 to 2.7 million a year.
Well, it's obviously led by the people, and certainly the council and the mayor for taking that extraordinary move to, I think, insuring it for like another 10 years. Is that correct?
another 10 years. And I think that was important just to make sure that they'd have baseball here. And I think that's a new step that Major League Baseball is taking, right? That, it used to be Major League Baseball didn't seem like they were negotiating with the municipalities, right? Negotiating with the owner of the team, and then the team would negotiate with the city. And, and the lease was one of the leverages that the team ownership had in its dealings with Major League Baseball. Well, now I think the city, especially in this case with such a drastic reduction in level, they wanted assurance from Major League Baseball that there was going to be a team here long term, and I think Major League Baseball was probably concerned about litigation, right? Well, is the city of Fresno going to take us to court over this? Is the team going to take us to court? So, that's part of the agreement too, is that the city of Fresno, released all claims of any litigation against MLB. But in return, they got a guarantee that there's going to be a team here for 10 more years. And there's even some wording of it to be longer. The wording is not as strong as through 2030, but MLB is saying it's going to use its best effort to have affiliated baseball here through at least 2036. So again, that's not a guarantee. That's not a contract.
No.
That's a letter that they have sent. So, I guess we're referring it to an assurance letter. So this kind of new dynamic between Major League Baseball and minor league affiliates, and we're kind of seeing it play out here in Fresno because, again, this was the trickiest domino to fall because of the long fall the team and the city is taking.
I'm glad to see the support that you all are getting for the Grizzlies from the city council and a 10-year agreement. I think that shows kind of a commitment, but it is Major League Baseball, and I won't say more about that. But whether you've got to cover the costs of the stadium still, it shows like a commitment, I think, where it's achievable to get where you guys need to be. So, I'm excited to be able – I love going out. I go down and see from here the Bradenton Marauders for the Pirates. Go ahead and see the Flying Tigers in Lakeland for Detroit. Those games to me are exciting. And as a baseball fan, yes, I love seeing the players come up or some of them come down for rehab. But even if they weren't there, I'm going to go to that game. I enjoy the heck out of it. And I hope all the fans there continue to do so as well. I was wondering, before we go any further, I'd like to hear, do you have a personal story about the Grizzlies that you'd like to share with us? Some special, memorable moment?
I think I mentioned earlier the on the field moment. The Lincecum is, kind of the highlight, right, of that, right? So that's what stands out to me. I remember the first game at the new stadium, sold out there. Oh, this was an exhibition game. The Giants were actually in town. One of the rare times the Giants came to Fresno, and it was kind of a mixed bag of Grizzlies and Giants playing, other minor leaguers, right? It was. And but that was a fun atmosphere, just the first game here. And I remember it's memorable to me because Tom Goodwin, former Dodgers and Mets speedster outfielder, he's a Fresno native. He scored the winning run for the Grizzlies against the Giants in that game, and the place went totally bonkers. That was a good one too. And then winning, and when they won the AAA. Gosh, the AAA championship was at a neutral site, and I want to say that the AAA World Series clinching win, I don't remember if it was here or not, but one of the, either when they won the division or they won one of the playoff games, that was pretty cool, because the game meant something. Those minor league games, mean something so rarely, but you could actually feel like that was a meaningful game. So, and the team had not been very good, in the standings for most of its existence also. Another thing I want to tell you that I haven't said is that, the Grizzlies themselves have been a great minor league baseball organization, right? They've been, as far as the way they're managed, their promotions, they've had some of the best marketing, some of the best promotions. It's been known throughout the country. Some of the things they've done they've been real trendsetters about, their alter ego of the Fresno Tacos. When they did that 5 years ago, that was totally new. Now everybody does that, right? So it was a copy. They were the first team to kind of adopt the alter ego, and so now that's commonplace. And they've done a lot of interesting things that get them publicity. had a couple missteps over the years, but it's been, overwhelmingly the good stuff they've done has been overwhelmingly more than the bad. So I think that it's good just to see that, and their management team they've done a good job. The other part of it is now we're in this California league where, the other teams, Visalia, Stockton, Modesto, San Jose, and then there's some teams in Southern California there. Those are all within driving distance. Visalia is 45 minutes from Fresno. Modesto is an hour and a half. Stockton, an hour and a half. So maybe there's a little rivalry with some of the other, teams that, might develop a little bit. That might be interesting. Maybe there'll be a rivalry developed with Visalia, for example. So they're a Diamondbacks affiliate. Who knows? I'm not sure if that'll do anything, but it'll be different.
Well, it does sound like there's a lot of exciting things, even with this change, with a lot of people didn't necessarily welcome, going from AAA to single A. The idea of having other teams in the area, like you said, the competition and drawing fans from those markets, to you all as well, and vice versa. So it does look like there's a lot of good possibilities and strength for the Fresno Grizzlies ahead. I'm glad to see that. It is so easy to sit back in a desk from somewhere and point over to Fresno and say, oh my gosh, look at all the terrible things going on there. Well, it wasn't ideal. But the thing of it is, you guys, Fresno has taken a positive attitude toward this. They got a 10-year agreement with MLB. There's opportunities, looks like, for the future. And you're going to go ahead and persist. And grow the things you've done with promotions, like I said, and the interaction with other cities. I'm excited about this. I'm certainly going to be watching you guys a lot more closely.
All right, well, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how, and again, the AAA baseball, the level of AAA baseball, people don't realize it's not major league level, but it's not that far down. And so low A ball for real, baseball observers and purists and people who really know the game, I think that's going to be a little bit of a difference for folks. Obviously, the players are going to be younger. Low A ball, you get, college, fresh out of college, and then also international players who've kind of earned their first shot at, full season ball. I think that's one of the reasons the Cal League went to low A, because it was high A for a long time. But I think, the weather, I think my understanding is that major league teams, especially the international players, that have come through short season league or Dominican league or instructional leagues, they want to start them off in a league where there's not going to be so many rainouts. I guess the Midwest League, Northwest League, those high A leagues are tough because there's so many early in the year, there's so many rainouts, difficult for development of young players. So that's what I've heard. That's why the Cal League is now a low A league. So who knows? There'll be teenagers out there, much younger players. AAA, we would have guys in their 30s in uniform, right? It wasn't that great. Guys that are still hanging on. The average age of AAA is 27. I think now it's 21, so it'll be different.
Well, again, I'm excited for you guys. Where just like I said, wasn't necessarily the change a lot of people wanted to see, but Fresno sounds like a great town to be there for baseball. And I wish you guys continued success, Mark. I appreciate you taking the time with us here at Baseball Biz today to kind of give us some insight instead of just looking at numbers on a page from some national story. You really gave us a feel for what's happening right now there with the Grizzlies in Fresno. So thank you very much. I wish you, the team, and everything that you're doing with Fresno B as a columnist, writer, continued success, and hope we get to talk again sometime soon.
All right. Well, nice talking to you. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Mark. I want to say thank you again to Marek Warszawski. He did a fantastic job of sharing with us what's going on in Fresno and with the Grizzlies, telling us a bit about their history and what their future is going to look like. So I applaud him. I applaud the people of Fresno, and I wish the Grizzlies the absolute best in the future.
Yeah, that was a really great interview to listen to and get perspective from a minor league community. Indeed.
Like I said, I could sit up on my high horse all day. I'm not going to know the things that he knows. I'm not going to have the attachment that he has. My attachment has been to a major league team. I love going to minor league teams, and I hate seeing what happened to the Charlotte Stone Crabs, a team of the Rays that's going to disappear. They did what they had to do in Fresno to keep a team, and God bless them, and I wish them all the best. But now we have breaking news.
Oh.
Boom. Teletype, what's going on? Okay, in breaking news, maybe it's breaking not, and that is the 2021 baseball season. What's it going to look like? Who's going to be there? How many games are there going to be? And the how many games that they're going to be is what we're going to talk about right now. That's kind of a bone of contention. I was looking at some stuff on The Athletic and elsewhere, and it looks like players are not warming up to the idea that what MLB is proposing, and that's a limited game season this year. Ouch.
I also saw something too, very interesting. They want to do it now, but they didn't want to do it last year. But a shorter season with prorated salaries.
That doesn't sound surprising. Yeah, that doesn't sound surprising. I mean, I know they're singing the blues about revenue. They're gonna do fine, meaning MLB, but I don't doubt that the players, they want to play a full season if at all possible. But there's a lot of concern too. I know some of them about, of course, COVID. COVID was the big restrictor last year. It's a deadly thing. The season getting started last year had some real heavy bumps when you look at the Cardinals and Miami and some others. Bam! I didn't know what was going to happen with the season anyway.
Even though we're only roughly 2 months out from spring training, 3 from opening day when it usually is, that's actually like an eternity with this virus, it seems like. Because, it could go like very bad and then it'll go down and it'll be pretty good times. You'll start getting more comfortable going back to more normal things and it'll go back up. And with this vaccine now coming out, what will it be like in another few months? That's something to see how it affects the world then.
I will be interested in seeing that too, Brandon. I know one of the things I'm curious about is with the vaccine, they're obviously looking at healthcare workers and some people in nursing homes and that sort of thing and getting it out to them first. I was hearing some concerns. Are celebrities and sports figures going to get first crack at this as well? And I don't think that would be received too well by the general public. I don't know how much. I mean, they said we're getting real close to spring training, and I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know that they're going to be able to have a full season this year.
I mean, I believe they could do a full season. Will they do it? I don't know. I think, we could get another shorter season, get closer to the more preferred game amount, and maybe like 120, which, would be pretty nice. We could get to see that, what it looks like. But I think a full season definitely is doable.
Right.
But will they do it? I don't know.
Well, we'll keep our eyes open on that, and we'll share with folks, future baseball biz, how that's developing. So that's a very real thing. I mean, early, last year, you and I were saying, is there even going to be a season? We had a spring training 1, then we had a spring training 2, and some said, well, the pitchers don't have enough time to warm up their arms, and they could have possibly more injuries. And there was a whole lot of concern about that. I felt like overall last year with their COVID protocols, they did a pretty good job. It wasn't an NBA bubble, but it was pretty good.
Yeah, they deserved credit for what they were able to accomplish, even though it wasn't the smoothest or the prettiest, and they pretty much changed the game and flipped it upside down on its head to get the season done. But they did what they needed to do, and they got a season in, and they crowned a champion.
Well, let's hope they can all get together on this and make some good decisions and safe decisions for everybody as well. I'm hoping that we have fans in the stands. I don't necessarily think it'll be opening day, but maybe midway through the season. I don't know. We'll see. I know Stu Sternberg says, well, I don't have that many fans anyway, so it won't be hard for me to take care of that.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Nothing to worry about there.
No. Oh, well. Well, I want to kind of end this note, a kind of sad and a happy note. I mean, country music lost a legend this past week, Mr. Charley Pride. He's known for a lot of songs. One of them is Kiss an Angel Good Morning. And you might wonder why we're talking about him here on Baseball Biz. That's because he was a much more diverse person than you might imagine. And not just country music, while it was his love, he also had a love for baseball. Here's a man who started out in the Negro leagues and then in minor leagues. And years later, he became a part owner of the Texas Rangers. So I guess that put him in good company, like with George Bush, and as partial owner of the Rangers. But he was somebody who would go out and sing the national anthem. He was beloved by the Texan fans, by the Rangers fans. He would even go into the locker room and play for the team sometimes before they go to the field.
I have it's not really like a fun fact. It's kind of a disturbing fact more than that, but definitely interesting if you'd like to hear it.
Yeah, please do.
Well, like you said, he played baseball, and during that time, the Negro Leagues was still around, and it was sort of towards the end when, MLB was becoming more integrated. And he said that when he was with the Louisville Clippers, who was a newer team in the league, they needed money. So they contacted the Black Barons, and they made a trade with him and Jesse Mitchell for money. And they used that money to buy a team bus. So they basically traded two guys for a bus.
What? I mean, wait a minute. You're saying that, I mean, I hear of all kinds of trades, but trading players for equipment?
Yeah, that probably wouldn't fly today, but I guess that's something they did back then.
No, yeah, that would, like I said, it wouldn't fly today, and that is a rather interesting transaction. Well, Charley Pride, he did a great job, like I said, as a musician. Love to hear his music, and I was actually listening to some of it yesterday. As what he did with baseball, it's amazing. You look at somebody who is around. I mean, you hate to see anybody pass, but hate to see a legend like that who has a finger in the past, who has a footprint in the past, having participated with like the Negro Leagues, and it's becoming rarer and rarer to find somebody with that history as time passes.
I didn't really listen to his music. I've heard of him, and hearing his story and just looking him up, definitely an interesting guy. And the more you hear about him, the more interesting he becomes.
Well, make sure you put Charley Pride as a station on your Pandora, just an artist on your Pandora, and check him out if you haven't. Again, Baseball Biz salutes him, his lifetime in music and his lifetime in baseball and all that he's given to us. And sorry to see you go, Charley, but you leave a great legacy behind you. Well, that's it for Baseball Biz. You got any other nuggets there, Brandon, we need to talk about?
Not at the moment.
Okay, well, just reminding folks, of course, they can find Brandon on Twitter at @TheSportsBlitz, and at @TheSportsBlitz1. It's a numeric 1. And you can find both of us at The Baseball Biz on Twitter. So if you'd like to send us anything there, also you find us on most directories like iHeartRadio, Apple, Google Podcast, Stitcher, etc. And go ahead and like us, subscribe, or just go ahead and leave us some notes. We look forward to your participation and appreciate all that you do there. Well, Brandon, man, that's another great show. I mean, we've talked about a lot of different things here. We talked about the free agency, Rule 5, Super 2s. Had a great opportunity by having Mr. Marek Warszawski with us, sharing his story about the Fresno Bees. Great columnist for the Fresno Grizzlies. He's with the Fresno Bee. And also, we talked about the minor leagues. We kind of skipped through some of what's happening, but we're going to take a deeper dive in that in future episodes.
And if you want to read that article by Sara Sanchez of BleedCubbyBlue.com, you can go to my Twitter at @TheSportsBlitz1, where I'll have it retweeted if you'd like to read it. So it definitely is something worth checking out.
Please do. So everybody, we thank you again. Again, I'm Mark Carbett, your host, and that's Brandon Noway. And once again, we want to thank you for staying here with us and on Baseball Biz. Look forward to putting some other things together. If you've got any suggestions, leave them in our reviews or leave it on Twitter. And we'll talk with you again real soon. Also, special thanks to X-Take RUX for the music Rocking Forward